This show is brought to you by Interesting Radio. You can find all our shows over at interestingradio.nz.
Welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast, Episode 3. And today I am joined by two guests and one of my regular hosts. Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey. So I've got everyone all at once. So I've got Rohan here as my host, and then I've also got Peter and Paulus as our guests, and a special welcome to Paulus being the founder of the Home Assistant project, and without him we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm going to actually drop you in it straight away and have you up first. You had a couple of things that you wanted to talk about, especially the updater and the stats that you collect, and also a little bit that changed in 0.47.
Yeah, I think first off, I want to just say that I'm really amazed by the podcast. Like it's, I was a bit skeptical when you guys first approached me because as like, the people in charge of like Home Assistant, we get, me or Robbie and some others, like we get approached by a lot of people being like, oh, I have this great plan. Can I get like official endorsement? I want to be the official X of Home Assistant. And most of the times I'm like, yeah, in the beginning we would say yes. And then those people would disappear, but we still had like this project affiliated with us. So I was kind of skeptical also with this one, being like, is it going to happen? Like, are they going to follow through? But here we are, episode 3. I think it's awesome. I'm enjoying listening to it a lot. I think you guys are doing an awesome job.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
One of the things I wanted to talk about today is the updater. And not per se. So what the updater does is it checks for updates with the Home Assistant server. So it can tell you if a new version has been released. But besides checking for updates, it will also, if the configuration value is not disabled, it will send which Python version you're using and which platform you're using. So if you're like on a Raspberry Pi, or if you're using Docker, if you're using a virtual environment. And I thought it would be cool today to talk a bit about like, the numbers we're seeing. Right? Like seeing how many people are using it, how many people like... and of course, this is not a full representation of the Home Assistant user base because this is all, people can opt out.
Mm-hmm.
And we have like a comment in the configuration section that talks about like it's sending data. So I'm assuming a lot of people will opt out because people don't usually like feel like sharing information. Although this information, in my opinion, is very little. It's especially very helpful for us. But yeah, let me jump like straight in. Like the most interesting statistic for us is that we have 66.3% using Raspberry Pis.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is 66.3% running Raspbian 8. There's also Debian Jessie Lite, which some people use, I guess. But yeah, most people are on a Raspberry Pi. And this is also reflected in like the Python version that we use, that we see most users are on, which is 67% being on Python 3.4, which is, only 10% are on the new Python 3.6, which makes sense because we actually see that also around 10% is using our Docker image, which we recently updated to Python 3.6. I wish more people were on Python 3.6 because it's a lot faster than Python 3.4. There's been a lot of changes under the hood, like not based out of Home Assistant, but actually inside Python.
And so does that affect functionality in any way? And the reason I'm asking this is if it doesn't, then there's no reason people shouldn't.
Yeah. So we had when we well, there was one issue we had with the last release, but we addressed it in 47. So when we initially released our new core, which was a lot faster using async IO, which is a synchronous input-output technology that's included in Python, we started seeing a lot of people were experiencing seg faults, where just home assistant would completely crash. So we had we wrote some code that would monkey patch and actually fix Python under the hood, because we couldn't wait for the fix that that somebody merged to get released in Python 3.5.3. But then we actually figured out when Python 3.6 came around that the bug was fixed for most people, but not everyone. So actually, a bunch of people started experiencing seg faults again in the last release. So we now put another monkey patch in place that slows down Python 3.6 actually a bit compared to it actually reverts one of the optimizations it made, but at least we can prevent seg faults again. And we're still looking into seeing if we can find the issue inside Python. It has to do with the garbage collector in CPython. So you can imagine that's not an easy task to debug and find what's going on.
Yeah, I'm glad it's you doing it, Paul. It's not me. So I mean, so really, there's no reason for people to not upgrade to it, outside of the one thing which we have a workaround for right now.
Yeah, So because Python 3.6 is faster and uses less memory.
Yeah.
Especially important for that 66% of people that are using it on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, well, so the people that are on Raspberry Pi are limited by Debian. So Debian Jessie, which came out 3 years ago, I think. Yes, or 2 years. No, 2 years ago. It included Python 3.4 as a default Python. And actually, last week, the new Debian came out, Stretch, which is using Python 3.5 as a default. So, I mean, Debian 3.6 has only been released in January, so it makes sense that Debian doesn't ship with it yet. But there's no Raspberry Pi image available yet for the new Debian, so I would expect people to eventually adopt the new Debian, in the next 6 months.
Right.
Or they will adopt our new work on HashIO.
Yeah, and we were talking about that. I think it was the last episode, which is a great way to do it too.
Yeah, I think we haven't really published a lot about HashIO. We have a whole documentation section on the website, but it's currently not linked from our main menu or linked anywhere on the site.
Yeah. We
are kind of still in the experimental phase. However, I was talking with Pascal, who is the lead on the project, and we're probably gonna see if we can do an official release the week after the next Home Assistant release. So that will be in 2 weeks from now. There's still got to be issues with it, but we realized that the biggest hurdles have been documented or solved, and it will be awesome just to see what people can do with it.
Right.
Yeah, it would be good. And I guess having it out there and used by more people will help you find more issues with it as well.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with what HashIO is. I think you guys touched base on it last episode.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, then I'll not go into too much detail. It's just a new way of distributing Home Assistant. With more UI, less command line.
Have you got any other interesting stats for us from the updater?
Yes, I have a breakdown of countries. So we can see what the majority of the users are, where the users are from. The biggest biggest group of users is from the United States with 32.5%. We have 7.7 from the UK. Sweden is 7.3%. The Netherlands is 6.2. Germany 7.9. China 3.4. Canada 3.9. Australia 4.4. Those are the big ones.
Hmm.
Canada's surprisingly low.
Yeah. I must be one of 17 people using it, apparently. No.
Well, I think when I look at the user stats, there's always a lot of Europeans that are using it, like comparative. I feel like to
Yeah.
the United States. And it's difficult to just justify why would that happen. I mean, I have some ideas. Like one of the ideas is that people have more spare time and less money, so tinkering around with technology that is available for free online is an easier makes more sense maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But I mean, it's all assumptions. We don't have any real statistics on it.
Yeah.
Are these statistics going to be posted anywhere, Paulus, or is that going to remain internal for now?
I mean, I just told all of you, so it's not really internal anymore. But yeah, we've been thinking about what's the best way of publishing these data, and I think we probably should maybe per quarter or per month just put out a report. But hey, these are the stats that we have. In the last version, we also enabled by opt-in component reporting, but the report I have in front of me doesn't contain any information on if anyone has it enabled or not. But the idea of component reporting is gonna be that if a component has a serious security flaw, that we should be able to put a notification being hey, we see that you're using I don't know, some lock and there's a security flaw, you need to update your firmware. Kind of helping people stay secure.
That would actually be really cool.
Yeah, it's great. That's not even really, that even, not exactly Home Assistant security flaw, but even in the firmware, that's a pretty awesome service to be providing to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, so we're not there yet, but this is the ideas that I'm playing with, because it's we have, if people want to share this information, we can actually give them these functionality. And I think for us, it just be interesting to see how many people use the Z-Wave integration or the Zigbee integration.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see too. I don't know if this is even possible, but if you even break it out to say, okay, what people are doing. Like for me, for example, I'm using my SmartThings as a Zigbee Z-Wave bridge, right? So if we can see, okay, these people are getting these kind of stats from MQTT using something like a signature from there or something like that. That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean so there's always this balance about as a development team, you always want to preferably know as much information as you can, because then you know what the product is being done and
Yeah.
We could even have automatic exception reporting, right? Because there's free tools available that we can use for that. However, it gets into a barrier of it gets into a territory where we have to take the privacy and the into consideration, right? People, it's their house, and what if a stack trace by accident contains personal information that can be used to either identify them or contains an authentication key. We have to tread very carefully.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of information that in the wrong hands could be used against people with home automation, given how integrated many of us have it in our houses, locks, cameras, lights, motion, everything.
Well, it's even some people have which room and which movies they're watching, right? It's such aspects of your personal life. And I mean, one of the things that we what we are proud for that Home Assistant offers is, hey, we're local first, right? We will integrate with cloud services for you, but the core engine runs in your house. Nobody has to know about it.
Yeah.
So it would be kind of weird if we start sending it out to ourselves.
Exactly.
Fantastic. All right, given a recent issue, which we're not really going to talk about in detail, did you want to kind of talk to us about your thoughts on the use of the Home Assistant name and, the code base and other products and the association with it.
Yeah, definitely. So we had an incident last week where a company put out a Kickstarter for a product which was using code of Home Assistant, which on its own is perfect, right? Like, we always build Home Assistant in such a way that, like, pretty much I've provided the core framework of Home Assistant and a front end on top of it. And there's like over 500 different contributors who have like written their own packages to talk to different integrations and then have integrated those packages in Home Assistant, right? So it's a big wide network of open source software with like as goal as like get as many people to control their house locally. And so I thought it was cool to see that a company was using Home Assistant. However, they also wanted to be, they put up our name to be associated, like, kind of like create a public, like, how to say, they were like, the text was like written in such a way that it showed that they were affiliated with us. And that was not the case. And I think for us as an open source community, like driven by volunteers, it is not in our benefit of being associated with vendors that sell our code, because they are selling it to people that are not per se developers, right? And those people will not be able to contribute back to Home Assistant to the community because they're going to be part of the community of that vendor. And so I think it's in our best interest, we don't want our name to be used. I think that's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah,
I
think it'd be pretty safe to say if anybody needs anything, they should reach out to you. Is that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I have a call also scheduled with that company later this week, just to talk about what happened and see, like, it's not like, we're gonna hate that company now, or like, I still feel like, they're doing cool work, and I don't want to like block them from participating in the Home Assistant community. I just, want to make sure that we kind of got off on the wrong foot, but I hope we can, I don't know if it's going to be collaboration, but at least, be not enemies in the future.
Sure.
Yeah, it's good to hear that. Yeah, that they're willing to talk and everything, and they responded reasonably well to the concerns that were raised. So that.
Yeah, no, they were very quick. Within hours of us putting out the blog post, they got all the material updated. So I thought that was
which is awesome.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, great. And it's the last thing specifically for you is that you said that you'd be happy to do a bit of a Q&A on the podcast and, a couple of episodes from now if people wanted to, submit questions for you to answer about Home Assistant.
Yeah, I'm willing to like hop on a future episode as well. So yeah, I think they can just reach out to you guys with some Q&A, and then you guys pick the questions that I will answer or try to answer. Nowadays the Home Assistant development is, I am not like the main driver. I still do a lot of the code review, and I do a lot of, but I'm not per se doing much of the development as much as I do more almost like community management and code quality. It's kind of my thing. I'm mainly, it's taking up my time.
Yeah, and by questions, I'm not really looking for, like tech support questions. It's more, about the project or things like that. The community and the forums and the chat community is probably a better place for tech support questions.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have a guest, our other guest, who's been very quiet up to this point. We have Peter here, who is the creator of Floorplan.
So hi guys, and thanks for having me on the podcast today. Yeah, look, I'll give a bit of a rundown about the Floorplan and just how it came about. But first of all, just want to say that being able to integrate this into Home Assistant, it's just been a really, really interesting adventure, you could call it. Even 2 months ago or so, I'd barely even really known about Home Assistant. So I think that's pretty much a good example of how open the architecture is, to see how a new component or add-on can be sort of developed and become fully fledged in such a short time span. So basically, the floor plan is really an extension to the Home Assistant front end. It lets you add your own visuals in the shape of SVG image files to your front end. And the idea is for those images to represent a whole bunch of your Home Assistant entities. So, sensors, lights, cameras, pretty much whatever you want to expose in a visual form, that can be done using this extension. It's based around, as I was saying, using SVG files. And the reason why SVG files are the core of this is because they do display nicely on different devices. They scale well. They're, at the end of the day, they're text-based, so you can open them up in a text editor and make changes on the fly. Another good thing is that they are a very HTML-like sort of structure, so that you've got elements with IDs and regions which are implemented as shapes. You can have text elements in there as well. At the end of the day, each of the regions in your SVG can be styled. It can have, like an element can have hover over text, it can be clicked. So overall, SVG gives us the ability to basically model a whole bunch of stuff inside something that's very attractive visually. So it was written in JavaScript, only because that was, the language that I know the best. And also it uses the existing Home Assistant WebSocket API for integrating with the backend. And again, that was very nice and easy to get up and running. The API for the WebSockets is just very straightforward and at the same time very powerful. The project has its own GitHub repository. It's got its own dedicated forum, or I should say thread, on the Home Assistant forums. That's where all the latest updates and discussions take place. The thread has currently got, it's about 9,500 views over the past month and a half. And so it's quite active, it's quite popular, which is good. There's been a lot of good collaboration and ideas coming from that. And the community has submitted, a whole bunch of really, really nice examples showing what can be done. So, so that's a little bit of a background story of it. So if there's anything else you want to know.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you because I've added the UI, like the API to add like custom panels and adding the WebSockets, I think like a year ago or something. And until you came around, nobody used it. And I was like, wait, this is like so easy to get started. And like, you only need like some JavaScript and you already have like an interactive UI. And I'm glad that we have your repository now, because not only is it like, it looks amazing and it works amazing, and it uses it's a great example for other developers how easy it is to build on top of Home Assistant. Yeah, well, it's a bit of a domino effect, I guess, because what got me started was the Home Assistant page about custom state panels, and there's a link there taking you to the GitHub repo. I think it's Andre. I'm not sure of his name, but Andre Git is the username. And that's where there are some good examples of getting a custom state card up and running. And that really got me started. But what the initial issue I had was that there's a mapping of like a one-to-one relationship between entities and their custom state cards. And because I wanted to represent potentially many entities on the one state card, I had to sort of come up with this idea of using a dummy entity as the source of the state card. And then that's where the floorplan.yaml configuration was born, because that let you then introduce your own configuration and your whole bunch of other rules and behaviors. So at the end of the day,
it still did begin as a single custom state card, and then it got enhanced to now support the use of a custom panel as well. And just recently, we got it working so that you could have multiple floor plans across your Home Assistant front end. So yeah, it's become really flexible as we've gone on. The original floor plan project was actually a standalone project, and I really just moved the code from there into Home Assistant. It's something that my brother and I were working on using Node-RED as a graphical way of putting together our little engine for managing, state changes and workflows. And the original UI was actually using Bootstrap. But as our project progressed, we actually found that we were developing our own little home automation platform. And that's where I got to a point where I realized, there's only so many hours in a day. There must be some other project out there that's sort of covered all these bases. And that's what really got me looking into other existing platforms like OpenHAB, Home Assistant, and so on. But Home Assistant, to me, was the obvious choice. It just seemed like it was really, really modern. It was very open. And that was just a couple of months ago. And, here we are.
And now you've contributed something that's pretty much blowing everyone away, and I think that's the amazing thing about open source is that, you can jump in just a couple of months and, become an integral part of everything and, make massive contributions. And it's such an awesome thing. And I think we talk a lot on this podcast about the wife acceptance factor. And I think that the floor plan helps with that because it's a nice, simple, easy way to get a view of everything that's going on without having to, go to Grafana or, browse through tabs and the thing and find the default state cards or, go to the command line even or anything like that. It's just all right there and they can go, well, I know if this room is here, so it must be there. And that, another definite good addition for the wife acceptance factor for Home Assistant.
Yeah, and I think the visual aspect of it is really appealing to people. Whenever you have something textual in nature versus something, graphical and, colors and coming to life and giving you the ability to interact and actually, fire off some commands and actions using the interface. I can definitely see where the popularity comes in there. But what's interesting is that it hasn't just remained at the level of being just a floor plan. People have gone a step further and started implementing sort of all sorts of weird and wonderful visuals of whether it be remote controls with buttons that do stuff. I ended up with a bit of free time on a Saturday afternoon and ended up putting together an image of a Ring doorbell, which basically shows the current battery level and the motion detection and the buzzer real-time status as well. Logitech Squeezebox players showing, the current playlist and albums and that sort of thing. People putting multiple floors of their house on there as well. So I think the name itself, Floor Plan for Home Assistant, doesn't necessarily represent, what it's limited to. So I guess the sky's the limit, really. Whatever is, graphical in nature can be presented in that way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I guess that kind of goes along with everything with Home Assistant is, the level of what you can do with it's only limited by your imagination with, automations and everything like that. Whatever you want to do, you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to have those documentations too, right? Like on the Home Assistant website.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, that's something that
reminds me. That'd be cool to mention here. Oh, sorry, Peter.
No, you go for it, Paulus.
Okay, we just added search to the documentation.
Hooray!
It's actually there's this new startup. It's called Algolia, and I was doing some React work on the front end at work, and I was looking at their documentation search. It was like powered by Algolia, and I went to the website, and it was they offer it for free to open source projects. So I pretty much just plugged it in, and it's been awesome. Now all of a sudden we have search across all the documentation.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so good because the documentation just grows and grows with every release, and it's awesome documentation, but yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to find things. So that is amazing news.
Just regarding the, if I can chime in again about the floor plan, from what I could see, Paulus, there's is it the Home Assistant front end is moving towards, is it Polymer version 2.0?
Yes.
Okay. What changes do you think that will bring, or advantages to what we have?
Oh, that's a very good question. So Polymer 2, so actually Polymer 1 was based on HTML standards for web components called V0, which was an unofficial web component standard that Google implemented into Chrome that was pretty much just to get a feel for how it is if this standard would work, and how it how it would work, how does it incorporate the rest of the web platform. And based on the experiments with V0, they managed to get it standardized as Web Components V1 officially. And V1 has been implemented in Safari now and in Chrome, with Edge and Firefox have it on their way. And so what Polymer 2 is bringing to the table is that it will support the V1 Web Component specification. I know this is all very technical talk, but what it boils down to is that our front end will be a lot faster on Safari, including Safari on iOS. So until now, we were fast on Android devices because Chrome had a native implementation of web components. I'm assuming you were using Chrome. But now iOS, if you're using Safari, we will be fast too. And as a developer of web components, there are a few changes that you have to make, and they're related to how child elements are passed around in web components, which now is in V1 it's slots. And so actually when I upgraded, I was playing around with the front end in Polymer 2 already, and we hardly needed any changes besides upgrading all our elements to the hybrid versions, because they managed to put out a standard that is both compatible with Polymer 1 and Polymer 2. And so we're going to run that version so that the migration path is going to be very painless.
Okay, so yeah, we can expect the floor plan might need a few changes once that new version of Home Assistant is released. And also regarding the actual use of Polymer as a front-end framework, how did you come to start the Home Assistant front end using that rather than, let's say, Angular or something else?
Well, there are two reasons for it. The main reason was that I was using React at work, and so at home, I use Home Assistant pretty much not anymore because I cannot make big changes anymore, but for stability reasons. But I used to use Home Assistant as a testbed for new technology, right? So I wanted to learn about WebSockets. Okay, let me make a WebSocket API. I wanted to learn about MQTT. Okay, let's make an MQTT component. And the same was with Polymer. I wanted to use web components. And the other thing that drew me to Polymer is actually that where React and Angular are frameworks for the front end, Polymer, besides being a framework for the front end, also contains UI elements. And these are UI elements that Google itself uses in Polymer products inside and outside of Google. And it means that they are accessible, they're beautiful, and they're fast. And so for me to put together the Home Assistant front end, I could focus completely on the UI and the UX, instead of also having to develop all the components from scratch. And now, we've been with Polymer for 2 years, over 2 years, I think already, 2.5 maybe. And it's really paid off. Like it's fast. We're able to leverage code splitting easily. I spend a lot of time in like just optimizing it, because like we aim to run on phones, and so I spend a lot of time just making the front end like super fast on phones, and Polymer really helped in achieving that.
Yeah, I can definitely see the advantages on mobile devices, because that's what I constantly test on, mostly Android and Windows Phone. Normally, if it works on them, it'll just work on the iOS products. But yeah, a really good advantage that the Floorplan has made use of is the more info pop-ups, so that in the Floorplan, when you do hover over, let's say, a camera, if you click on it, it'll just resort to using the built-in component that's already been implemented within the Home Assistant infrastructure to basically display what is normally displayed, and that is like a live camera feed, for example. So, thanks to the way Home Assistant's been implemented in Polymer, the Floorplan is really just a shortcut that sits in between what would normally happen in Home Assistant anyway. So looking forward to Polymer too.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Peter. It's good to get a good intro of the Floorplan for those that may not have heard about it. And thanks very much.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, so to wrap things off, we'll just cover off a few new things that came out in 0.47. Paulus briefly mentioned the monkey patching of Python 3.6 to fix the seg faults, which is kind of nice, because the last thing you need with your home automation is for it to seg fault in the middle of the night and then nothing be working when you get up in the morning. There is a way to disable it if you so wish, and that information's all in the release notes. Next, Python scripting, which is an awesome addition. I'm quite looking forward to breaking it out and doing some things with it, because I've been doing a lot of using MQTT to fire off to Node-RED and then kind of doing my scripting in there, which is adding an extra component. So being able to do it all inside Home Assistant is going to be really good. I think someone, I don't know who it was, has added some points that they wanted to talk about with the scripting.
That'd be me.
That was you, I presume. Yep.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, it looks like we turned this podcast episode very technical in a few areas.
That's all right.
Last time we were talking about, like, you guys were talking about, where they sell the Amazon Echo and the Google Home, and now we're talking about like mobile performance optimizations. Anyway, this is going to be down that last route again. So Python scripting, it means that you're able to, it's a very cool new functionality, and it's something that not has been requested directly, but a lot of people have raised their issues with, like, they pretty much just hate writing YAML. And I understand, because our automation configuration has almost turned into like its own programming language, but then YAML based. And for a long time, I always, like, when people were like, "Oh, I don't want to write YAML," I was like, write a custom component. It's pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward, but it never really took off. And then AppDaemon came around, and AppDaemon has been very successful. So AppDaemon is a third-party integration, and it allows people to write small Python scripts that hook into Home Assistant. And AppDaemon is very powerful. It does automatic reloading, and it will it fully integrates with Home Assistant. But I felt there was still a kind of like a need for something like in between, because AppDaemon requires you to install a third-party application. It requires you to configure and set it up. And so I was, at some point it just came to me that, like, hey, we just could use Python, because we are written in Python, to just script things on the fly. And so I added the Python script component. It's running in a sandboxed Python environment. That means that not everything of Python is available. Some people are realizing there's pieces missing, and we're working with them to get those added to Home Assistant. But for now, it already works very well. Where like it's the Python scripts are exposed as a service in Home Assistant. So from your automation inside your trigger, you can say, "Hey, call this Python script and pass this data in that is available inside the automation." And then based on that data, you can do like you can query any state in the Home Assistant. You can call services. You can fire events. You can even update states. So you could like keep track of a counter or etc. And so I think it's a really cool new component. And Fabian has added a new category in our community forums. It's under Share Your Projects. And there people can share their Python scripts about like, you know, the functionality that they've added and how you can use it. I think it's a really cool new feature. And I think in the future, what we're gonna the future of this functionality is gonna be that we're gonna maybe add some missing functions that people are like they want to have. So one of the functionalities that people were missing was the ability to parse JSON. Those will be added. But it will very much stay around to be just like a small subset of Python that you can use to script Home Assistant so that you don't have to get fully stuck in YAML land anymore.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just having a quick nosy at the example scripts and I'm just having a look at your count how many people are home, which is actually pretty handy.
The examples I put up were one was just counting how many times something happened, and the other one was actually counting how many people are home. But you can count anything, right? Like how many doors are open right now, how many, whatever data is available, you can run any code on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to converting some of my automations over to use Python scripting though, and have a little bit less spaghetti code, because there's some things that, you know, you write in YAML and it takes, 30 lines, which you could write in 3 lines of Python. So I'm quite looking forward to getting things cleaned up.
Yeah. There goes your weekend too.
Oh, yes.
Actually, this shouldn't be that bad. This should be pretty, just looking at it, looks pretty straightforward. So
yeah.
And one of the nice functionalities that we, as part of the implementation, is that it will, instead of where like with, if you're developing a component or platform for Home Assistant, you always have to restart Home Assistant to test your script. In this case, the scripts are always loaded on the fly again. So if you make a change, you don't have to restart Home Assistant. You can just call the script again.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, especially with my limitless LED lights that switch off every time you restart Home Assistant.
Oh no. Yeah. So I guess that's number one for you, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the limitless lights have to be, initialized to a non-state. That non-state is off. That's why I got rid of most of them. One new feature that I noticed in 0.47, which is I'm mentioning for mostly selfish reasons, is the ONVIF cameras. A lot of the really cheap, nasty, like $30 cameras you buy off eBay are ONVIF type cameras. I've been running them through various, NVR, network video recorder software, and then pulling, images into Home Assistant, but being able to do that directly will, again, remove another link in the chain and bring everything else into Home Assistant. I guess that's the good thing about all these components that are getting added is that the less external things you have to do, you've got one place to look for everything.
Yeah, that's actually this release 47. We actually broke the number of integrations. We're now at 713. So we surpassed the 700 integrations.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's mind blowing. It's just, and they just keep coming. Like it's you're like, I feel like we have every major integration, and then somebody comes, you're like, oh wow, yeah, we didn't have that one yet.
Well, I think the ecosystem is just growing too, right? Like if you look at how many startups there are, or even how many new products existing companies are releasing, right? So,
I mean, it's very cheap to add, a smart part to it, right? Like the chips for like an ESP, for example, are like a couple of dollars.
Yeah.
The biggest concern with all these things is always security, right? Like anyone can put like a Wi-Fi able product out, but can you support it? Can it like withstand the, are you going to support it forever, or at some point are you just going to say, don't use this product anymore?
All right, I think that's probably a good place to leave it, unless anyone had anything else they wanted to talk about or any final thoughts.
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Yep, same here.
Thanks very much to Peter and Paulus as well for joining us. Great to have you both on and get a bit more insight into the project from you, Paulus.
Yeah, no problem. It was great being here, and looking forward to being with you guys next time.
Of course.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.